Have we got something that finally, after so many attempts to top the original, that it's actually topped the original?
Lights, camera, action.
Welcome to the Cinema Dive. My name is Nathan, and today, for my first video, we are going to jump into Prey. It's brand new, it's fresh on everyone's mind, and if you haven't seen it yet, well, stop the video right here, go watch it, come back, and let me just spew my opinion all over you. Now, to start off, I do really highly recommend this movie, and honestly, if you're a fan of the Predator films, any of them, whether you're just a traditionalist and love the originals, or if you even love all the other stuff that they've done, go watch Prey. It's well worth the watch. You'll love it, and you'll probably watch it multiple times. To be honest, when I first heard the announcement of this film, I was hesitant because I'm not a huge fan of all the other entries into the franchise, the mixture of the AVP universe, the Predators movie, and the solo Predator movie that they made with like a mechanical suit, and just a huge kind of mess that's come from the nostalgia of this franchise. But overall, I was actually really impressed with this movie. The more I saw the trailers, the more interested I got into it, and that just kind of pushed me into the element of, hey, you know what? As soon as this comes out, I have to get on it. And to be honest, I think it's approaching the level of what the OG represents for a lot of the people who are traditional fans of the very first Predator.
Bullshit.
I mean, this one has everything. You have an amazing protagonist, you have great cinematography, great music, great casting, settings. Everything about this movie actually comes together to make a very well informative movie that doesn't rely too heavily on nostalgia, but does kind of lean into it a little bit. We'll get into that later on. Now, just to be aware, there will be spoilers in this, but before I get to any real spoilers, I will notify you. So if you want to watch up until then, and then go watch the movie, whatever you want to do, or if you just want to spoil the whole movie for you, stick around. So let's start with the basics, in case this one slipped past you. It was directed by Dan Trachtenberg, who was the director behind 10 Cloverfield Lane, which is a great movie if you haven't seen that one yet. He also did some work directing some episodes of The Boys. Now, for the movie, he actually worked with a producer named Jane Myers, who happens to be a member of the Comanche Nation, and this enabled them to get a much more accurate portrayal of the characters in this movie and get that closer tie to the Comanche Nation as is. Real quick, the setting of this movie is set in the early 1700s, and we have a young Comanche girl played by Amber Midthunder. The girl is a member of a small Comanche tribe and is kind of trying to break the mold of the typical fit-the-role aspect that they have going, and she wants to end up being a hunter and warrior alongside with the men. So that's what she's kind of trying to prove to not only herself, but to her brother and to the rest of the tribe that she is capable of doing. Now, before getting too far along, I don't know if you knew this when you watched it, but there are two ways to watch this film. Watch it just in the English version, or you can watch it in a dubbed version where the actors came back and reread their lines in Comanche. And then they did some lip syncing, matching CGI stuff to kind of try and make it look a little bit cleaner for the final look. But if you have a chance to go watch that one, I would. It's a beautiful language, and it's just kind of cool that they ended up doing that. Now, I'm not going to run through every single detail and every single thing that happened in this movie, because if you're watching this all the way through, you've probably seen it, you know what happened. I'm just going to kind of break down what I feel, and how I think it ranks among the rest of the franchise in total. So we're going to start talking about the synopsis of the film, and we're going to talk about casting, effects, and every change that they've made that compares to the originals. So right now, this is your spoiler warning. Go no further if you don't want this movie spoiled. Alright, spoilers! So as I said before, our starring role is played by Amber Midthunder. She plays a young Comanche girl named Naru, who is, like I said, a member of this tribe and is seeking to basically prove she's as good a hunter as any of the men in the tribe. And when she was actually auditioning for this, she stated that she had no idea what she was auditioning for. All that I knew was it was a film about a young Comanche woman who wanted to be a hunter, and Dan Trachtenberg was directing it. Now, it's not uncommon that some people go into auditions a little bit blind, maybe don't know the whole scope of what is trying to be done, maybe even after getting a role, maybe they don't get the full script, but usually they do know what they're auditioning for, and not even knowing she was auditioning technically for a Predator movie was probably an interesting role when she got revealed that later on. Now, as far as her previous work, I haven't actually had any chance to go look at any of it. I've heard a lot of good things, though, about Legion and a couple of other of the shows that she's done before, and I'm actually looking forward to go checking those out and seeing what they're all about. The cool thing about that is that she ended up doing a lot of her own stunts for this movie, basically on the fact that she did a lot on Legion, and she actually practiced some martial arts for that show as well. On top of which, they made all the actors endure a 4-week boot camp, so to speak, where they practiced the fighting techniques of the Comanche Nation from around that time period of the 1700s, learning how to use their weapons, their tools, and so on, to try and give that authenticity and hammer that home. Now, when it came to stunts in the Predator suit, Dan DeLaguerro, who was the actor who played the Predator, actually had a task and a half playing him, as he had to have his head tilted downward for the Predator to look forward, and doing this with an 11-pound animatronic head on top of his own head had to be quite intense. Now, our movie has one protagonist, but she has a brother that pops up quite a lot and is definitely noticeable. His name is Tabe, and he's played by Dakota Beavers. And while he shows compassion for his sister, he questions whether or not she's actually ready for her katamiya, or her rite of passage to become a hunter.
Tabe, this morning in the sky, I saw a sign. The Thunderbird. I've been practicing. It's time. I'm ready for my katamiya.
You really think you're ready? You want to hunt something that's hunting you.
Amber actually plays Naru with a slight teenage angst, someone who just doesn't want to fit into the conformity of what she's living with at the time, and is basically trying to prove herself to be equal or even better hunter than that of the men. Now, with this teenage angst, she does get a little bit of that strong-headedness that comes with, well, being a young teenager kind of person. But yet, at the same time, she shows a bit more intelligence and a bit more patience than her fellow hunters in the tribe.
You were little, so Mother took you to gather medicine. But Father and I went up into the hills. The rain was bad. Everything was wet. We crawled through the mud, and my bowstring got ruined. You were sleeping.
I was waiting for it to circle back. Now you're gonna have to cross the river to get it. Don't get your bowstring wet.
She wants to be fearless and show that she can keep up with even the best of the tribe, but at the same time, she's a cautious person. She knows how to hunt, she knows how to evade, and she basically outthinks all of her prey. But her strong-headedness still makes her pursue a bear in one scene, which at one point gets pretty close to actually getting a hold of her. But obviously comes her rescuer. Well, the Predator, of course. Who else would rescue her? Now, that scene alone shows that she is mortified, terrified of what she has just seen, what she has just witnessed. But yet, the hunter in her wants to pursue this new beast. She wants it to be her trial. Her katamiya, as they put so eloquently in the movie, which is kind of a rite of passage for hunters and warriors of the tribe. Now, her intelligence comes out pretty quickly because she starts learning very fast about this new hunter, this new predator in her area. And she's learning that, for one, it doesn't seem to attack those who are unarmed or don't appear to be a threat.
No. It doesn't want bait. It doesn't hunt that way. I didn't think I was a threat.
She learns later on that this medical plant that she's been using to treat wounds is actually got a side effect to cool the body down far enough to make it so that you don't register on thermal vision. And we'll talk about that one later.
But I'm killing you. And it won't either.
And she basically ends up having to start outthinking this Predator because she doesn't have an M134 minigun that she can just light up the forest with. Now for me, the way she thinks and how you see that even though with the fear she has, she puts forward bravery, puts her in a cinema standing league with something like Sigourney Weaver's Ellen Ripley from Aliens, or Linda Hamilton's Sarah Connor from Terminator 2. This is new era for the Predator. Every other Predator movie has been set in its modern time. You know, it's taking place on other planets and different parts of the world overall. But this is the 1700s. This is primitive times, you know, compared to what we live in nowadays. Like I said before, there ain't no muscle-bound commandos with big-ass weapons and an M134 to just blast the crap out of this thing. In fact, when you look at Naru's weapons, obviously they're primitive. She's got a bow with stone-tipped arrows. She's got a stone tomahawk. These aren't really that effective weapons against a beast as large as a predator. So, in the end, it's her wits that has to win this out. Which obviously near the end, we do witness that she is able to trap him in kind of a pit and use its own weapon against it. But obviously before she kills him, she does incredible amounts of damage to him with her primitive weapons, a combination of his weapons, and of course her trusty sidekick dog.
Come on. Do it. Do it. This is as far as you go. No more.
To kill it, and then takes his head as a trophy, as the Predator has done with all of its hunts, taking the skull for a trophy. Then of course she returns back to her tribe, shows them that she's accomplished this hunt, and is seemingly rewarded with being made leader of the tribe of some respect. As far as I can gather, maybe I got that part wrong. But then she lets them know, hey, obviously there's this new predator in the air. We probably should pack up. And then all is well again. Or is it? More on that later. So there's your synopsis of the film. Now it's time to talk about, well, what is different about this movie than the previous installments of the franchise? Well, let's talk about the Predator itself. They went a different route of making this thing look even more alien than it already did before. Now, this was a little jarring for me at first, and I'm not the only one, according to what I read on the internet. Now, in the original two, Predator 1, Predator 2, the suit was obviously 100% practical. The face mask that had all the mandibles moving was all animatronics, whole 9 yards, and even the camouflage invisibility look was actually camera effects. Nothing was CGI in that movie, or in the second movie. For me, I love practical effects, and when they're done really well with a good high budget, I think practical effects in most cases can beat out CGI. But obviously in today's world, there's just so much that we can do now in cinema that practical effects just can't accomplish on that large of scale, and we have to use CGI. This movie blended the two. Now, is it the first one to do that? Obviously not. But sometimes that comes off as a little bit of a jarringness because you can distinctly tell between what's the practical suit and what's a CGI predator in the film. Now, in Prey, they did use a practical suit, but they obviously had the transition back and forth between CGI and the suit depending on what it was doing at the time and where it was going. Now, when you look at the original suits, they all kind of look the same, right? The paint jobs maybe looked a little bit different to add that dimension, but once the face mask came off, it was the same face. Now, in Predator 1 and 2, the eyes always came off way too human to me, and it looks like they kind of understood this with the rest of the films in the franchise series. They definitely went with either kind of keeping the eyes out of shot, darkening them a lot around them so they're not coming on the camera. But anytime you do see the predator eyes, they look either too human, or in Predator 2's case, they look like a robot. Now, like I said, the jarringness between the transition of practical and CGI did get to me a little bit, but after watching this movie a second time, I actually started to really like the whole overall look of the Predator. And even with the CGI, I understood why they did it. I understood why they pushed more for an alien look rather than the traditional Predator look, which this whole round, Dan Trachtenberg actually wanted to give this a primal and animalistic feel to it. In fact, going so far as dubbing it the Feral Predator. And hey, at least they didn't do 100% practical effects, then decide to completely override all the practical effects with digital ones that look terrible. I'm looking at you, 2011 version of The Thing. Compared to the 1982 version, it just doesn't hold water. Not for me, no. The practical effects in 1982's The Thing, excellent. But that's for another video. So how does the Predator look different in this one, you ask? The new Predator has a much more taller stature, and it's a lot more leaner, not so bulky as the rest. He also has this kind of hunched look to him. In fact, when the creators were going for inspiration, they actually looked at the native tales of the Wendigo. And when you compare it to some of the old photos or some of the drawings and depictions of the Wendigo, you kind of see a similarity to them. On top of that, they basically took the eyes and pushed them further out towards the edge of the head and gave this much bigger orbital skull structure in the middle of the head to completely try and obliterate that humanesque look to the creature, trying really to push it into that alien realm and actually give it a little bit more scary look than the original Predators. On top of which, his mask is not that nice metal full face covering mask that they pull off and reveals at the end that they're a scary monster. This is a skull of some, former alien it hunted maybe on another planet, and it's inserted bits of technology into it for itself. But it doesn't cover the whole face. It actually covers about down to here, leaving the bottom mandibles exposed, which gives a very creepy look to the whole aesthetic. Now, with making him more leaner and more taller, they kind of gave him the impression of being or looking faster than his predecessors. And there's even a couple scenes where it shows off that incredible speed he has. And honestly, in the first couple Predators, when you watch the Predator jump, it definitely had that clunkiness look to it, like some actor in a bodysuit on wires was having to struggle. Whereas in Prey, when they did a lot of the scenes, they could do it in CGI and therefore make it look spectacular. Now, onto his weaponry, it seems they gave him somewhat of a downgrade. Now, I say that with quotation marks because to me, it doesn't seem like a downgrade. So instead of the plasma caster that we've seen in every single Predator film that has, immense amounts of power and can be laser targeted or whatever, he has this kind of a bolt caster. It seems that all three lasers can individually target something, and he can actually guide these bolts to their target, which to me actually seems a little bit more effective. It may not be as destructive, but when you have a guided projectile, that seems a little bit more advanced, don't you think? Maybe that's just me. Besides this bolt caster, which is new to this movie, we see some things that are familiar. Obviously, the expanding spear, his net that tightens and basically turns people into dice little cubes. But he also has a shield that has a deployability that he uses to, well, decapitate a few people. He also uses some of the hunter's traps against them. And let's not forget that trusty sidearm all Predators have, the arm blade. Now, obviously, we have seen different sized Predators. When it came to the AVP movies, the first AVP movies, the three Predators that come down to hunt the xenomorphs, they're kind of different sizes. You got one kind of thick boy, you got kind of one taller, skinny boy, and then you got your run-of-the-mill Predator that we've seen before in multiple movies at this point. And even in the movie Predators, you have Lawrence Fishburne's character Nolan describing how they always come in threes, and they have a tribalistic manner to them where the larger ones basically attack and don't like the smaller predators.
Two different types of them out there. Now, they're similar, but they're different. It's kind of like difference between dogs and wolves? The ones that are running things up there. The larger ones hunt the smaller ones. It's some kind of blood feud, I guess, been going on for a long time.
Which even in the movie you see a scene where one predator is tied up in a camp. Now, granted, they made them bigger and smaller, but they never really actually changed the look of it like this movie did. Plus, you really can't count the AVPs and Predators and Predator in as canon because they just don't quite fit. In Predator 1, 2, and Prey, it was a solo predator basically coming to a hunting ground to prove itself as a great skilled hunter itself. Versus the AVP movie and the Predators movie, you know, Nolan goes into saying, oh, they always come in threes.
Season. In threes, always in threes.
Well, that's only been true for 2 movies so far. Not even the second AVP had 3 predators. But overall, I think the more animalistic and primal look was the good way to go. And I was jarred at first, wasn't sure if I liked it. And now, looking back on it, I think I truly like the look of the new Predator. And I kind of hope we can see it again in another film. Alright, so we dived into the synopsis. We dived into some obvious changes that they've made with the Predator. We've discussed it comparatively to its canon-related films and the non-canonically related films. Now it's time to air my grievances. They are few, but they annoy me for some reason, and I don't know if it's just me. First one, I told you I'd come back to this. It's her medical plant that she uses. Apparently, it's a wonderful plant for all types of uses, and it can help people who are mortally wounded or whatnot. But here is where it kind of gets to me. You have this plant that supposedly can render you non-visible on thermal vision that the Predator uses. Now, you would have to get close to the same temperature as your surroundings, which is going to be, you know, probably in the 60s, 70s, something like that, especially where they were at. It's going to be kind of cold.
What's happening?
At 95 degrees Fahrenheit, the body goes into hypothermia. So if this plant does what it supposedly says it does in the film, she'd be dead. Now, I know, it's sci-fi, and I'm supposed to allow certain allowances for these kind of mystical remedies or whatever, but this one just bugs me, and I can't get past it, and it just doesn't hold up to the whole mud thing. Now, I know the mud thing doesn't technically work either, because eventually your body warms up the mud, but, I mean, this one just took the cake, because to get as cold as you would need to be, you would probably kill yourself. Now, the second and final thing that I didn't really like, they kind of strained a connection to Predator 2, tried to really throw it into the canon. This is where they put nostalgia before writing. Now, some people may not mind this, and I'm not saying I completely hated it, but I think it was unnecessary. They didn't necessarily need to tie it to this to bring about a possible sequel, but they still did. And in case you missed what I'm talking about, I'm going to explain. Near the end of the movie, French fur traders actually trap Naru and her brother. Now, they tie them out, and they're planning on trapping the Predator, who ends up coming in, realizing those two aren't a threat, and goes after the French fur traders. After she gets free, she's exploring the camp to find whatever she can to try and defeat this Predator, and is met with a French fur trader who has survived the attack while missing one of his legs. He basically says that he'll let her have his flintlock if she helps save his life. Now, she does that. She gets the flintlock. He tells her how to use it. And on the side of it reads, Raphael Adolini, 1715. Now, remember back to the second movie. Hopefully you've seen it. Hopefully maybe you've seen it recently. But if you haven't, there's a scene towards the end after Harrigan, who's played by Danny Glover, has killed the Predator from that movie on the ship of the Predator. All of a sudden, a bunch of Predators decloak and appear, and he thinks, I'm screwed. But what happens is they just pick up their fallen comrade, and as they all slowly disappear, one's left, who we presume to be the leader, pulls out a flintlock pistol and passes it to him as almost a trophy, a reward for defeating their comrade. And what does it say on the side of this on a brass plate? Raphael Adolini, 1715. Like I said, I don't completely hate this, and I get what they did. They were trying to tie it together so that way the parts of this, if there were to be a sequel, would fit together, but I just don't think it was really necessary at all. But speaking of that, did you watch the animated short at the end of the film? Did you watch the whole thing? So as you saw in the clip, the little animated feature shows kind of the entire film being played out, and it shows you all the events, all the major events, and everything that leads up to the end. But if you keep watching, right after she gets the staff and tells her people that they need to leave, ooh, ominous. All of a sudden it shows Predator ships incoming. And it cuts to the regular credits. Now this does lead into the fact of, hey, maybe this is what's going to happen. Maybe there is a sequel. Maybe she doesn't make it, and that's how they get a hold of the flintlock itself. Who knows? But it kind of does lead into that aspect of maybe what happened and possibly a sequel, which would be pretty cool. Now lastly, I'm just going to give my final thoughts, sum everything up, and see where this movie stacks among the franchise. I think this film breathed new life into the whole franchise itself. I think it gave a brand new look to the Predator, refreshed that tired old look that we've been seeing time after time, and kind of gave us a much more deviation from it, as there would be with any species. When it comes to casting, I really did enjoy Amber Midthunder in this, and I really do want to see more of what she's already done, and would love to see her in more future movies, just see what she has to offer, as well as just the character of Naru herself has been put on my list of cinema badasses and triumphing over what we've seen as one of the most ferocious and violent predators in Predator film history. Not only did she display courage and bravery, but she displayed intelligence and patience in her hunting and her abilities, which once again I think gives her the edge on those others in her own tribe, as well as it gave her the edge on the Predator. For me, the setting was really good. I really enjoyed the early 1700s. I enjoy the scenery of Alberta. It's a beautiful area in the world. But overall, I just kind of liked that we did get rid of all the guns and weapons and everything that would make, these mass armies of men going after these predators, And obviously in the first one, you had a whole, tactical commando unit going after one predator. In this, you have quite a few of the Comanche start hunting it, but they get taken out pretty quickly, and it's left down to one person. With primitive weapons, it's just made for a really good setting, and I would love to see that kind of setting again in the Predator universe. Now, as far as rating the movie, I don't do stars, I don't do numbers, I don't do thumbs up. That's an Ebert and Robert thing. I kind of look at movies of how often I think I would actually rewatch them, or if I feel the need to rewatch them. There are great movies out there that I've watched that watching it once is all you ever really need. And then there's movies that I probably watch every year because I love that movie so much. This movie probably won't fall into a category of watching it every year, but it's definitely not one I'm going to just watch the one time. In fact, I've already seen it twice, and I do plan on maybe watching it one more time before the year's out, and then maybe every once in a while down the line. Kind of how I do with the first Predator. And I think it's actually about equal with the OG, maybe even a little bit better.
Bullshit.
So with that being said, yeah, it's just hitting a little bit above the original for me, which is a lot to say. So now, if you have seen it, you didn't like it, go rewatch it. Just once, for me. See if it changes your mind. If it doesn't, I totally understand. Pop in the comments, let me know why you don't like it. Or if you're someone who has watched it and you loved it, tell me why you love it. Have you seen the originals? Tell me how you compare it to the originals. I love talking movies, and I love talking big franchises like this, especially ones that I'm a huge fan of. So get in the comment fields. Tell me what your thoughts are on the movie, how you think it compares to the other movies in the franchise, and whether or not you're a fan of any of the other movies in the franchise. And that's all I have for you on the Cinema Dive today. Hopefully you enjoyed this first video. I do have more videos coming here soon, and I'm gearing up for October, and I want to do some scary movies, and I think I have some fun ones to do. So keep that in mind. Check back. Hit that subscribe button. Hit that like button. Get down in the comment fields, and you have a fantastic day.